Charlie's Angels, 1976 to 1981, wasn't just a TV sensation, it was a cultural phenomenon that redefined female-led action on screen. The iconic trio of detectives captured hearts with their charm, beauty, and bravery, becoming household names across the globe. But beyond the fame and dazzling smiles, many of the cast members faced difficult personal journeys. Sadly, several of the stars who brought this classic to life have since passed away, some under tragic and unexpected circumstances. In this video, we honor their lives, explore their careers, and remember the angels who are no longer with us in 2025. David Doyle was born on December 1, 1929, and began his role as John Bosley in Charlie's Angels in 1976 at the age of 47. Bosley was a father figure to the Angels. His jovial warmth and slightly awkward yet sincere demeanor made him the emotional anchor of the team. Behind the scenes, Doyle's career had its moments of recognition, particularly in television, but it never soared to the stardom he quietly craved. He struggled for years in Broadway productions that closed early, and his transition into television was driven more by necessity than choice. David's personal life bore silent grief. His first wife, Rachel, tragically fell to her death in an accident in 1968, leaving him a devastated widower and single father to their daughter Leah. Though he later remarried, his heart never truly mended. His second marriage was reportedly strained due to his lifelong battle with alcohol dependency, which caused emotional turmoil at home and contributed to frequent separations. Despite a steady paycheck from Charlie's Angels, Doyle was often haunted by feelings of inadequacy, believing himself to be forever typecast as the comic sidekick. Financial setbacks plagued his later years due to failed investments and poor management, leaving him financially and emotionally depleted. On February 26, 1997, David Doyle died of a sudden heart attack at the age of 67. Tanya Roberts was born on October 15, 1949, and joined Charlie's Angels as Julie Rogers in 1980 when she was 31 years old. Julie was different, tough, street-smart, and brimming with grit. She offered a bold contrast to the more polished elegance of the original Angels. Her career, however, never found steady ground. Despite appearing in films like A View to a Kill and Sheena, Roberts was often dismissed by critics and fell victim to the sexist typecasting of 1980s Hollywood, which reduced her to little more than a bombshell. Her personal life offered no sanctuary. She married screenwriter Barry Roberts in the early 1970s, a relationship marked by codependency and emotional instability. They had no children. As his health declined, Tanya sacrificed her career to care for him full-time, withdrawing from the public eye. After Barry's death in 2006, she reportedly fell into a deep depression, becoming increasingly reclusive. Tanya suffered from chronic health issues herself and struggled with financial insecurity, living modestly and relying on residuals. Her loneliness was accentuated by estrangement from much of her family and a lack of close industry ties. In late 2020, she was hospitalized with a urinary tract infection that developed into a fatal case of sepsis. Tanya Roberts died on January 4, 2021, at the age of 71, after days of confusion about her health status. Farrah Fawcett, born on February 2, 1947, took on the role of Jill Monroe in Charlie's Angels in 1976 at the age of 29. Jill was the poster child of California glamour, athletic, bright, and courageous. She captivated audiences with her radiant smile and unyielding confidence. Despite an illustrious career that included the burning bed and extremities, Fawcett often found herself locked in battles over creative control and was deeply disillusioned by Hollywood's obsession with her looks rather than her talent. Her romantic life was equally turbulent. She married actor Lee Majors in 1973, but the relationship soon turned cold due to conflicting careers and alleged infidelities. They divorced in 1982. She later began a long and volatile relationship with actor Ryan O'Neal, with whom she had one son, Redmond. Farrah's domestic life was marred by emotional abuse and Redmond's severe drug addiction and multiple incarcerations, which devastated her emotionally. She fought bitter legal and emotional battles trying to keep her son out of prison and rehab. Farrah's final years were consumed by pain and desperation as she battled anal cancer, documenting her decline in a harrowing documentary, Farrah's Story, that revealed the unglamorous truth of terminal illness. On June 25, 2009, Farrah Fawcett died at the age of 62 from complications of her cancer. L.Q. Jones, born on August 19, 1927, stepped into the gritty and often shadowy role of Burdett/Dan Jarvis in Charlie's Angels in 1976 when he was 49. His character injected a layer of murky moral ambiguity into the otherwise sunlit world of the angels, often embodying the complexities of men on the fringes of justice. Jones was a talented and versatile actor known for his work in Sam Peckinpah's westerns, yet mainstream success continued to elude him. Typecast as a rugged supporting player, L.Q. spent his career largely in the shadows, never quite receiving the recognition his performances deserved. Off-screen, Jones harbored a deep sense of professional resentment and emotional emptiness. His marriage to Nita Lewis ended in divorce after decades of slow disintegration, and they had no children. He lived much of his later life in isolation, avoiding the spotlight and becoming increasingly bitter over lost opportunities. Two personal tragedies haunted him deeply: the suicide of a close friend and fellow actor in the 1980s, and a catastrophic fire that destroyed his home and lifelong collection of Western memorabilia, leaving him emotionally scarred and financially strained. L.Q. suffered for years from chronic illnesses and a sense of abandonment, as the industry and friends slowly faded from his life. He died on July 9, 2022, at the age of 94 from natural causes. Sunko was born on June 29, 1932, and played Lieutenant Torres in Charlie's Angels in 1980 at the age of 48. Lieutenant Torres was a stoic and intelligent ally, characterized by his no-nonsense approach and tactical precision, bringing a much-needed sense of realism to the Angels' often dramatized investigations. Was one of the few Asian American actors to break into mainstream American television during the 1970s and 1980s. Despite his talent, he was often relegated to background characters or villains, enduring racist portrayals and cultural misrepresentations. O's dedication to representation led him to found the East West Players, an Asian American theater company in Los Angeles, but the stress of advocacy work combined with his unfulfilled artistic aspirations wore heavily on him. In his personal life, he was married but kept his relationship extremely private, reportedly to shield his wife and children from the intense scrutiny and discrimination he faced. He had 2 children, both of whom struggled to cope with their father's long absences and the cultural dislocation of growing up in a society that rarely reflected their identity. In his later years, Sunko suffered from Alzheimer's disease, a slow and cruel erosion of the sharp intellect that once defined him. He died on April 4, 2018, at the age of 85, the cause of death attributed to complications from Alzheimer's. Dennis Cole, born July 19, 1940, portrayed Carl Hansworth and James Britton in Charlie's Angels in 1977 at the age of 37. On screen, his characters were the embodiment of charm, suave, polished, and always concealing deeper motives beneath a smooth exterior. Cole's career began with promise, featuring roles in Felony Squad and guest appearances on dozens of 70 shows, but his fame never quite translated to fulfillment. He was married 3 times, most famously to actress Jaclyn Smith, but the union ended in heartbreak amid accusations of emotional neglect and infidelity. He had 1 son, Joe Cole, who was tragically murdered during a home invasion in 1991, a loss that shattered Dennis beyond repair. He never recovered from his son's death, and it cast a long shadow over the remainder of his life. Struggling with depression, he withdrew from acting and turned to real estate, a move that brought little solace or peace. Alcohol and prescription pills became his crutches, and friendships faded as his bitterness consumed him. In the years leading up to his death, he was diagnosed with multiple health conditions, including kidney disease, which left him in chronic pain and dependent on dialysis. Dennis Cole died on November 15, 2009, at the age of 69 due to kidney failure, having spent his final years in near-complete solitude, tormented by grief and regret. Denny Miller, born April 25, 1934, began his role as Ed Fellows and Helmut Klaus on Charlie's Angels in 1977 when he was 43 years old. He brought to the show characters who were physically imposing and intense, often exuding an air of quiet menace or controlled strength. Miller had once starred as Tarzan, a fact that haunted him throughout his career, typecast and seldom taken seriously in Hollywood's elite circles. Although he managed to land numerous guest roles on television, including Wagon Train and Gilligan's Island, he often lamented being treated as a body, not a soul. His marriage to Kit Smythe in the early 1960s ended bitterly in divorce, after years of emotional distance and growing resentment. They had one daughter, Megan, who remained distant after their separation. In his later years, Miller struggled with the emotional toll of fading fame and a public that had long forgotten him. He turned to alcohol, which further strained what little remained of his familial connections. A lifelong advocate for animal rights, his passion was met with indifference, leading to his disillusionment with humanity as a whole. Diagnosed with ALS in his final years, Miller experienced a cruel and agonizing deterioration of his body. He died on September 9, 2014, at the age of 80 after a prolonged and painful battle with ALS. Dick Sargent, born in 1930, made his appearance on Charlie's Angels in 1976 as Avery and Hugh Morris at the age of 46. He brought a stern but fair presence to his characters, men of moral compass and quiet wisdom who often represented the systems the Angels had to navigate. Behind the screen, however, Dick lived with a profound secret. A closeted gay man for much of his life, he endured decades of internal conflict and Hollywood pressure to remain silent about his sexuality. Though he publicly came out in the early 90s, the years of hiding had taken a toll on his mental health. He never married and had no children, though he maintained a deeply emotional relationship with his longtime partner Albert Williams, who tragically died of a brain tumor in 1986. The grief from this loss never left Dick, and he described Albert's death as the quiet breaking of everything I was. His career saw early success with Bewitched, but as roles dwindled in the 80s, he experienced financial instability and bouts of depression. He was often left feeling like a relic in an industry that had moved on without him. In his final years, while battling prostate cancer, Dick became a quiet advocate for LGBTQ+ youth, speaking about the dangers of silence. He died on July 8, 1994, at the age of 64 from complications related to prostate cancer. Norman Alden was born on September 13, 1924, and played the roles of Jake Barnett and Louis Fluellen in Charlie's Angels in 1977 at the age of 53. His characters were marked by their rugged individualism, resourcefulness, and unwavering loyalty, figures often caught in the moral gray, adding gravity to the Angels' often glamorous world. Alden's career was long but tumultuous. Despite appearing in over 200 film and television roles including Electra Woman and Dinah Girl and Back to the Future, he rarely held the spotlight. He was continually cast as a background player, never quite reaching the acclaim he hoped for. In his personal life, he married once, to actress Linda Gilbert, but the marriage crumbled after just 5 years. They had one son, Stephen, whose battle with addiction deeply affected Alden and ultimately estranged father from son. His family life was marred by distance and unresolved grief, with Alden later admitting to feeling like a guest in his own home. His later years were marked by increasing isolation and poor health, worsened by a bitter falling out with his siblings over their parents' estate. A second blow came when he was diagnosed with early-onset dementia, a terrifying descent into confusion that robbed him of the few peaceful years he had hoped for in retirement. Norman Alden died on July 27, 2012, at the age of 87 from natural causes. Noah Keane was born in 1920 and began his role as the bank president and Dr. Post in Charlie's Angels in 1979, at the age of 59. On screen, He exuded wisdom and gravitas, characters who served as mentors or stable figures in chaotic plots. In real life, Noah had built his acting career on the theater stage before transitioning to television, where he often played distinguished gentlemen. But behind the calm demeanor was a man shadowed by deep personal loss. His only son, Michael, died in a car accident in 1968 at the age of 16, a tragedy that shattered his marriage to Margaret Keane. Though they tried to hold the family together, they divorced 2 years later, and Noah never remarried. He continued to act, appearing in shows like The Twilight Zone and The Waltons, but never found the personal or professional fulfillment he had once envisioned. His grief made him reclusive, and for years he refused interviews or public appearances. He suffered from survivor's guilt and was known to write long letters to his late son, which were never mailed. Toward the end of his life, he found solace in painting, though he remained largely disconnected from the Hollywood world he once knew. He died of natural causes on March 24, 2019, at the age of 99, having outlived nearly all of his contemporaries, but also having carried a lifetime of sorrow few ever saw. Lee Delano, born January 19, 1931, stepped into the roles of Al Norman and Dressler on Charlie's Angels in 1977, at the age of 46. On screen, his characters were firm, unsentimental, and driven by duty, often serving as rigid counterpoints to the Angels' emotional intelligence. Delano had a long but underappreciated career, often working in the shadows of bigger stars. Though he trained at the Pasadena Playhouse and appeared in Mel Brooks' films like High Anxiety, he was largely relegated to supporting roles. He never married, and those close to him speculated that his intense dedication to his craft may have been a way to avoid confronting his own loneliness. He had no children and was estranged from his siblings following a bitter inheritance dispute after their parents' deaths. Lee struggled with feelings of invisibility and failure, often noting that he walked among giants but was never seen. He suffered 2 major breakdowns in the 1980s, both attributed to professional rejection and unresolved childhood trauma. His final years were marked by seclusion and worsening physical health. A fall in his home left him with limited mobility and dependent on a caregiver he barely knew. Haunted by the sense that he had never truly lived, Lee Delano passed away on October 8, 2017, at the age of 86 due to natural causes, his death unnoticed by much of the world he had quietly inhabited. Richard Ballalion was born on January 29, 1931, and played Artie Weaver and Eddie Fiducci in Charlie's Angels in 1978 at the age of 47. His characters were street-smart hustlers, morally flexible and full of nervous energy, bringing an authenticity to the underbelly of crime that few could replicate. Though he appeared in films like Chinatown and several Disney productions, Ballalion was never seen as a leading man. Constantly cast as delinquents or small-time thugs, he resented the industry's pigeonholing and grew disillusioned with the superficiality of Hollywood. He never married, and though he had long-term relationships, he kept most of his romantic life private, often confiding in friends that he feared he was too damaged to love properly. His family ties were distant, marked by years of resentment and misunderstanding stemming from a rough childhood and a strict Armenian upbringing. In his later years, he struggled with paranoia and signs of undiagnosed mental illness, becoming reclusive and mistrustful of even his closest confidants. Financial instability forced him to live modestly despite decades in the industry, and he frequently expressed regret over wasting a lifetime chasing approval from strangers. Richard Ballalion suffered a stroke in late 2014, which left him debilitated and requiring constant care. He died on February 27, 2015, at the age of 84 from complications related to the stroke. Gene Barry, born in 1919, joined Charlie's Angels in 1977 at age 58, portraying Frank Jason and Steve Moss, characters exuding suave sophistication and effortless charisma. On screen, he was the quintessential gentleman, often a smooth-talking figure who charmed both allies and adversaries. His real life, however, was burdened by personal contradictions. Though he starred in hits like Bat Masterson and Burke's Law, Gene struggled with being typecast, and his career was often in flux. He married Betty Claire Kalb in 1944, and while they stayed together until her death in 2003, their marriage was not without turbulence. Rumors circulated for years about Gene's affairs, emotional neglect, and long separations due to work. The couple had 3 children, Frederick, Jessica, and Michael, but Gene's demanding schedule and emotional distance created long-standing tension with all of them. His youngest son, Michael, battled addiction for decades, something Gene never spoke of publicly but which privately haunted him. In his final years, Gene suffered from heart disease and declining memory, leading to isolation from both family and former colleagues. He died of heart failure on December 9, 2009, at the age of 90, after spending his last years in quiet obscurity, far removed from the fame and glitz that once defined him. Cesare De Nova, born in 1926, stepped into the roles of Franco Sorella and Frank Bartoni in 1970 SIX's Charlie's Angels at age 50. With his suave European presence, Cesare brought a refined, almost dangerous allure to the series, often portraying figures with secrets and shadowy pasts. Off-screen, his life mirrored his roles more than he might have admitted. Despite a promising start in Italian cinema and later a breakout role in Viva Las Vegas, his Hollywood trajectory was stifled by studios who saw him as exotic but replaceable. Cesare married Patricia Danielle, a beauty queen turned model, and they had 2 children, Marco and Bianca. Yet, the marriage was riddled with infidelity, and Patricia filed for divorce in 1971 after discovering Cesare's affair with a much younger actress. The scandal affected his reputation and led to a sharp decline in roles. He became a peripheral figure in the industry, often cast in minor parts or entirely overlooked. Cesare struggled with alcoholism throughout his later years and was rumored to suffer from depression and feelings of professional failure. Financial troubles compounded his woes, forcing him to accept roles in low-budget films he openly disdained. On March 19, 1992, he died of a heart attack at the age of 66, alone in his Los Angeles apartment, with only an old photo of his children by his bedside. Who is your favorite character in Charlie's Angels? How do you feel knowing that the actors have passed away? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss future videos. Thank you so much.